Hi, and welcome to Mr. Fisher's Math Essentials podcasts. This podcast is on setting prices. So when setting prices, obviously consumer demand and supply are things that need to be taken into account. Um, as a business person, what you sell your product with impacts how you're going to be working with that particular consumer. So a couple things come to mind. First is markup. So markup is the difference between the amount a dealer sells a product for and the amount he or she paid for it. So oftentimes markup is a percentage. Now a percentage is a ratio in which the denominator is 100. So businesses will often have a markup price so that they can make profit. So, for example, sales tax can be considered a markup that governments put in order to collect tax from people. And in Canada, we have GST, which right now is 5%, and the PST varies by province. In Manitoba, PST right now is 8%. And so let's look at a couple examples. Before we do that, when setting prices, businesses consider psychological factors for their prices. So for example, if we were to compare these two values, right? This one here obviously looks cheaper, even though it's only cheaper by a penny, but psychologically we see $39.99 as being way less than $40. Another thing to consider is oftentimes you will see a business advertise prices like that, and that's because if they were to do it this way, again, obviously this looks cheaper, when in fact both prices in this case are proportional. They're the same price. So let's look at some examples. Person purchases fabric at a wholesale price for a custom sewing business. She pays $46 a meter. She charges a markup of 20% on the fabric. And so what will she charge her clients per meter? So let's figure out, first of all, how we go about turning a percentage into a decimal, because a percentage is not going to be useful mathematically. To do that, it's very easy. So this is 20%. And in order to take that as a decimal, remember that I'm going to probably have a decimal right here on the right. What I'm going to do is, because I'm moving, or because we're talking about percentages, I'm always going to move 2 spots on a decimal place. So to go from 20 to a decimal, I move 1 spot and I move 2 spots. So in other words, 20% is the same as 0.20. So now that I have a decimal, I can figure out what the markup is. Well, if she buys her fabric for $46 per meter, and she's going to mark it up 20%, then her client price is going to be 20% of $46, which is an extra $9.20. So she'll have her price here plus her markup for a total price of $55.20. Okay, and that's how we look at decimals and percentages. Let's do another example. So a furniture store in Saskatoon selling a bedroom suite. The list price is $15.99. So notice if we put $1,600, it automatically looks more than $15.99, even though it's off by $1. What would the total cost be, including GST and PST? Well, PST in Saskatchewan is 5%. And so GST is also 5%. And so let's calculate what the sales tax would be, and then we'll add it into the total price. So 5%, if I look at 5%, remember I do the same thing. I take my decimal and I'm going to move it over 2 spots. So in this case, 5% is going to be the same as 0.05. So now I'm going to take that 0.05 and I'm going to times it by my furniture price, and I'm going to come to a price of $79.95. That's my sales tax for my PST. GST is going to be calculated the same way. And it's the same calculation, so I'm going to get $79.95. To calculate the total price, I'm going to take my $15.99 and I'm going to add $79.95 and I'm going to add $79.95 PST GST, and so I should get a total price of $17.58.90. And that's how we look at setting prices using markup and percentage, and I hope that was helpful.